and I am with you, so don't be afraid. And all that matters is what I say. Teach me to crave what you say about me, what you say about me, what you say about me.
All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome back. It's another episode of Live in the Studio. Today, we are very honored to have Mandy Carmenate in with us. Mandy is a worship leader from the Charlotte area, yeah?
From Columbia area.
Okay.
That's where I live.
Cool. Very cool. Will you tell us a little bit about yourself and, do your introduction?
Absolutely. So I am small town girl, born and raised in a little city called Sumter, South Carolina.
Okay. Very cool. I've been there once.
Okay. So you know this a few stoplights, the corner store. It's built up a little bit, but very small. Grew up there, then went to college in Charleston. Lived there for a little bit, then moved to Columbia, met my husband. He's from Miami, Florida.
Okay.
So we got married in Florida, lived there for a little bit, had our baby girl, and then we ended up moving back here, which is home for me, Columbia.
Okay. Very cool. Very cool. Yep. Now, you're primarily a worship leader out and about in the area as far as music goes, yes?
As far as music goes.
Yeah,
yes,
awesome. So
absolutely.
Tell us a little bit about that. How'd you get into it?
So singing, music has always been a very important part of my life. Grew up in church. My parents sing, so like singing around the house. My mom actually was a recording artist in her younger days.
Very
So
cool.
I was always kind of like soaking it up, soaking it in. But then I got into chorus at school, and my parents didn't know that I could sing. I had been like secretly singing. And they came to this program. I must have been like 6 or something like that. And I had a solo. And they were in the audience. I saw their faces. They were like, what in the world is happening?
That's awesome.
So music has always been a part of my life.
Now, you said your mom was a recording artist. Mm-hmm. What did your mom do? Like, what was her style of music? What was
Gospel
she?
music.
Okay, very cool.
Gospel
very
music,
cool.
absolutely.
Like, so did you have your mom's albums growing up or anything like that?
Well, she only had one.
Okay.
But yeah, I had it growing up, always listened.
This is an experience I'm super jealous of. Like, so my parents, I had no one in my other, I had 2 grandmothers that played piano, like a little bit. But as far as like in my direct family
nobody.
that I lived with, no one, not even close,
Wow.
But her dad was a saxophone major in college.
Okay.
He was a worship pastor.
Killer player. She's so good. And I remember like the first time we started dating and he was like, hey, I need you to come play on Sunday. He handed me like all Lincoln Brewster tunes with like the most, and you'll know, like just guitar wise, I was like panicking internally. It was just the biggest pressure test ever.
Yeah.
And, but it was really fun. I just worked at it.
You passed.
Yeah, I did pass,
See?
obviously. celebrating 9
Look
years.
at you today.
Yeah. So we made it. But, no, I was just like that idea of like growing up in a musical household. What was that like? Did you draw like off of your mom's ability, or did you just kind of pick it up, like gleaning from just being around it? What was that like?
Pretty much just gleaning from being around it. And my mom, in addition to singing, she was also a writer. So like writing poetry, writing songs.
Yeah.
My dad also amazing vocalist. Wasn't a recording artist per se, but amazing
Singer.
voice.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
That's awesome. Yeah, I didn't realize it growing up that like the people, because it was removed from me a little bit because it was my grandma, and I would go. My grandfather was a pastor, and so they would go to church together, and she would play keys out of the hymnal, and he would preach, and then they'd have like a couple singers. But I would go and stay the night at their house on Saturday nights. And wake up and walk. They lived in the parsonage, so we would walk to church on Sunday morning. And I don't think it really like dawned on me that like impacted my life. Now that I look at it, I'm like, there was some influence there that I didn't even know about at that age, you know?
Yeah. You know the word parsonage, you are a real church kid.
It took
People don't know that
the
word.
The first time I told that story, it took me forever to find the word, but I've shared it, you know? And so you kind of are like, what was that thing called?
Yep.
And then I had to Google it. Yeah. I don't know. Those are good times, though.
Yeah, I grew up in the same type of church. Like, and when my pastor originally came from Boston, he bought the church and the parsonage together. So the church was the same color as the house.
That's very cool.
So I know exactly what you're talking about.
It was like that. What was like growing up at church?
Mine was so different. Well,
I feel like yours were all contemporary.
They were. So my dad was out of college a worship pastor, but he was like that 90s era Chris Tomlin thing. Like I never read a hymnal growing up or whatever. Okay. So like people would be like, "Oh, you're a pastor's kid." And I'm like, "Yeah, but like I never sat in a pew growing up, like never had to do that. We were always in either like mobile churches in schools or like an actual building, but it was always like non-denominational.
Yeah.
Christian contemporary. So anytime I get assigned a hymn on a Sunday morning, I'm like, "Do I know that one?" I don't know if I do. I gotta listen to that.
I have like a weird experience of like because my grandmother was a piano player. Like when I started playing guitar, she started telling me like what she heard when I was playing. She was like, "You're not playing all the notes in the chord." You know, like I had like that moment.
Oh, grandma was getting you together.
Never thought. My other grandma is also a keys player, and she was very like, I guess just non-traditional. Like she just played at home for fun. She never played at church. She just had a piano from the time I was, I don't know, I remember, but like being 3 and 4 and like running over to the thing. And then eventually when I got old enough, she shipped it to me when she moved out of that house, which was super. Wow. That was a really special thing for me. So tell us a little bit about like when you started worship leading, what was that experience like just within the church?
Yeah. So I would say the worship leading portion, before college, it was more so like choirs. Okay. Because in like most country Black churches, like there's not a worship team. Back then it was like choirs. So I would direct the choir, teach voice parts. I played piano, I played guitar. So
I can't imagine directing a choir. That's intimidating to me. Like
but that's where I learned. That's why I developed an ear for a lot of the things I use as a worship leader. Yeah. So when I got to college, that was more so. I went to Charleston Southern in Charleston. It's like Southern Baptist Christian school. Okay. So there was there was the more contemporary. That's when I kind of got exposed to that world. So it's worship leading for me has been like a merge of all of those different cultures together. Awesome. Yeah.
For like choir directing, like how do you what's like the steps that it takes to like develop the ability to do that? Like did you just like, were they like, "Hey, we need you to show everybody the parts 1 week," or like what was that like?
Yeah, so I learned, it was I watched like the directors at our church, and then again, I just always had this ear, so I could hear like where the sopranos are supposed to be, where the altos, where the tenors. So by the time I was 10, I could teach a song in a choir. Like
that's a gift.
Like nothing.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's how I learned, and as the years went on, it just kind of my ear developed, so my skill developed.
It took me a long time to get like any semblance of decent vocally, and like I've been singing since I was maybe 18, 19, like before that, but I was literally like in vocal coaching from like 16 to 19. So I don't think I went out and about trying to play very many places heavily until I hit like 18. And I just had such a rough time with it. Like we got married and she was just amazing already. And I was writing songs. This is what was weird for me. Like the writing piece came to me way before singing really like got anywhere good. So and I think it was because I was writing guitar parts for records way before then. So like I could hear a melody and write a melody.
Just couldn't always sing it.
I wrote poetry. I wrote poetry as a kid, and like so they overlapped. And at a certain point, I recognized like I had been around enough people that were writing through the years that like it clicked. But I couldn't sing. I would like write what I'd like do okay for the verse, and then I would come up short in a spot where like I heard what I wanted it to be, and I couldn't do it. And so it took like maybe.
You still do that. We'll be tracking in here, recording, and he's like, "I hear this. Can you try to do this run thing that I have in my head?" I'm like, "No."
I'll play it on like keys or like on guitar if I can't do the run or something like that. Yeah. And that was kind of it took me like writing a ton, and then really that, like, I would write it and that would become my motivation for like learning to sing it.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to be able to do it at that point. And
right.
So yeah, the idea of directing a choir sounds scary because I just got me worked out. You know what I mean? like,
how am I gonna help you?
Yeah. I do all right when it's if it's like in the studio and it's another guy who's maybe like trying to figure out a harmony part or whatever, that like the range like of our voices like overlaps enough. Like I can help there.
Yeah.
But at a certain point, I'm like, have you met my wife, Shaylin? We need her help. You know, if it's guitars, I got it all day. Like, that kind of thing.
So on the show, we've had KJ, we've had Becca, Chelsea, a couple of these other people who are involved in Unplugged. So how did you get involved in that, and what's that experience been like for you?
Yes. So with Unplugged, so our fearless leader, Pastor KJ, he did a mentorship program called Life in Song, where basically he was mentoring aspiring, upcoming, or current worship leaders who just kind of wanted to go deeper. So I applied for that and got selected. So he mentored me. And at this point, I had stopped singing and doing worship leading completely. Because I had experienced just some discouragement in that space. And I was just like, okay, Lord, like, I don't want to do this anymore. Like, I can just... At this point, I had 3 children, small, so I'm like, I'm just going to focus on being the best wife I can be, being the best mom, homeschooling my kids, and I'm just going to hang out here, and I'll sing at home.
Yeah.
But, of course, when you get next to someone like KJ, they're going to, like, call out all the things and call you up, you know, to where God is calling you. So my husband was really the one who encouraged me to do that mentorship, and you know, God just had other plans. So I had to come out of retirement and get back on, you know, in my place. So
that's awesome.
And then Unplugged is like my favorite place to lead worship now. It's just such a beautiful rainbow of people and cultures, like just all coming together. And the freedom is just amazing. So just people that love God and love the gospel. So
were you there for the first one?
I have not missed one.
You haven't
I
missed
have
one.
been
What
there
was the first
for
one like?
Every one. The first one, wow. It was, for me, it was a little scary because like I was just getting back into singing again. So I didn't know what was going to be like. And then it was in a coffee shop, which was totally like, different. What? A coffee shop in Rock Hill? What are we doing?
Yeah.
And we all like piled into this small little room because we didn't have like a green room per se, and just kind of prayed, and but it was amazing. Like the people, the energy in the room, like the presence of God, it was just awesome.
KJ's one of those that like you meet him and he's just, you could tell like the kindest heart right off the get, and you can't miss it. Like it's so it's such a big heart, you can't miss it.
He's a presence.
That's a really sweet thing.
Yes,
absolutely. Shout out Knowledge Perk. That's actually where we met KJ one-on-one the first time. It was
I had been like, we wanted to invite him on, but it was one of those where like I knew at that point
he was busy
guy. You know, and so I was like, I'm just gonna wait because we like, it was like I could get his number. We know enough people that know him, but we'll just wait on it.
Yeah.
And I went in to get coffee on my birthday, and he was sitting there totally alone.
There are so many stories like that.
That's a birthday
about
present
Knowledge
right there.
Perk.
What that is. And so he had seen the show at that point, and then of course like he knows Becca and stuff, and so we had enough mutual friends that he was just like, we talked for, I don't know, it wasn't too long. Not that time. And then he came by, and the first time he came by, we didn't film. We just sat here for a couple hours.
At the end, we said we should have because we talked for like 4 hours.
We did say we should have. Yes, that's true. But actually, that was a really sweet thing, and that was one of those where you recognize, like, I mean, he literally just showed up to talk with us, and that was it.
That's a pastor for you.
It's kind dude. A
shepherd, you know?
Sure.
Yeah,
for sure. So today, you told us a little bit of this before we started, but what's your current like involvement in worship leading? I know you said it's changed over time, and you started off more of like gospel background, and then leading a church, and then college, and then what about like today?
Yeah. So today, I serve at a couple different churches in the Charlotte area. They're both like pretty new church plants that have not developed like worship culture per se yet, are still like finding that and don't really have, you know, the full on support of a worship team. So someone like myself who has years of experience and can kind of just come in and serve. So that's kind of like what I'm doing now, and I love doing that.
We were talking about the idea of like, you know, at one point you were just serving like in one area, and then sort of now like the season has changed where all of a sudden like you're able to help in multiple different places, which I think is a really special thing actually, because it's like the idea of ministry changing over time. And, you know, you started off like directing choir, and now it's like you're showing up for the local body in different areas, which I think is a really sweet thing. We know a couple people that do that, and I think it's a way that like you literally know, like when somebody's like, we have some people at our church that play that are kind of like that. Like they come to play and they're super sweet, and they show up and they're just there to do that. And like, that's the only, and I don't mean that they're not part of the church family, because they definitely are, but like they're there because God called them to serve in that capacity, and they know it. And so they're here like, hey, I'm here, you know? And there's a sweetness to that that I think is, I guess maybe it just comes with, because it's intentional and you know it is, you know?
And it's been really healing for me to do this, because there's not like this hoarding of my gifts as I had experienced in the past, just kind of like, hey, be here, be only here, don't go anywhere else. So being in this space is a lot more like liberating, and it's just more loving.
Yeah,
you know?
I had an experience kind of like that when I was a kid. It was really weird, and it was like sort of by happenstance. It was like somebody that was like kind of leading in a gap, and I was maybe like 16, and I had a week off of playing, and I went to go lead for my sister was and her at the time, now husband, but her at the time boyfriend, were at a small little church plant, and they were like, hey, we don't have anybody for Sunday, would you want to come lead? I was like, sure, I'm not playing. So we drove over there, and I played for them. I'm like 16 years old, and like somebody said something to me about it, and I was like, this is so weird. And like it doesn't not to like, you know, not make too big a deal out of it, because we were young. I don't think he was older than like 21 or 22, like, and I was 16, so it was really probably more high schoolish than anything else. But I was like, I'm just like literally I'm available, right? You know, why wouldn't I help them like that? And so there is a piece of that where I think even when we approach like ministry, to recognize like it really is a global church. You know,
absolutely.
So.
It blows my mind, honestly, that people would like I've never experienced anyone being like, no, you stay at this church, just because like in my growing up, like when you're a pastor's kid, like you move around a lot. You know what I mean? My dad's worked at a lot of churches because God just moves you around. And in between all of those moves, he would serve and play and lead at other churches. That was how we met. Was in between jobs, he was helping out at Relevant when they were in the school at the time, and Billy was playing guitar, and he was like, I need a singer and an acoustic player this week. And so that was where I led. That was where we met.
I was a little trio.
That's just so normal for me. Like in my brain, I'm like, oh yeah. You know?
That, actually, kind of like what you were saying, at that point in time, our church we didn't really have like a I guess like a worship pastor, worship director, whatever you'd call that role, who was like actively singing every weekend.
Right.
We had somebody that was directing the team and like planning, but he was a drummer. And we would literally, like, the bassist for my band, and then myself and Dan, the drummer, would play as like a backline for different worship leaders that would come and help us on Sunday mornings. And so we literally like played with a ton of people doing that. There were like some very interesting ones in that, though. Of
course.
That were like definitely like I was like I remember one of them where I was pretty sure the dude had to have been like in an AC/DC cover band, because his voice was so close. And like I heard him like turn that character in his voice on, and then like turn it back off for when it was time to sing for church. And I was like, dude, all right, that's interesting. Like, and so you'd meet like really, I mean, all very sweet people. I was so young that I didn't really think too much of it, but I look back on it now and I'm like, yeah, like they really were just coming to help, you know.
Yeah.
And, so I think there's a need for that.
Yeah.
When it comes to your sound and like developing as like a singer or influences or in your songwriting, what's that been like? Where do you pull from, or like what are some of your influences?
Yeah, so I've always been one that I listen to all types of music, like whether it's something that's, you know, close to me or not. So there's gospel influences, there's pop, there's reggae, there's jazz, there's blues. Now I've gotten into listen to folk music, like because I love the melodies of it, and I listen to all these different things, and my ear just pulls in whatever I need to pull in. So there's that, and then obviously I have like artists that are influential. So yeah, I think that's kind of how I've developed a sound over the year. And then like what you were just saying, like you come in contact with all these different musicians. And it's like you kind of learn from each other.
Yeah,
or at least that's how it should be, like in a healthy environment. I think a lot of people, when they get next to people who may be better than them or stronger, like there's this tendency to lean into like comparison or like just, you know, something negative. But I take it as an opportunity to learn.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, and if you meet like people that are, if you end up, it's interesting when you get skilled enough in like one area, all of a sudden you find yourself like, oh, like the people you're playing with are, I would maybe like a bare minimum is they tend to be about as good as you are on what you're doing and what they're doing, right? So the better you get, the better the people around you.
There you go.
You tend to be around, and
Absolutely.
so you kind of get this opportunity to be like, oh, you're like a really great keys player. Could you? Any chance you want to show, you know, and like, I literally did that. I did that with Rebecca when we started playing with Becca a lot. I was like watching what she would do and like picking up little tiny things. And I was talking to, and I got to the point where I just asked too. Like if I hear somebody
like how you do that?
Help me.
that plays totally different from somebody else that I know, even if it's the same instrument, I'll be like, so what's your approach to that? And like, just let them say whatever they're going to say and like try to absorb it.
I think that's so healthy.
Yeah. I started doing that pretty young, but then even in like marriage, like picking up harmony, like, and I'm not like that great at it, but she was definitely the one that got me like on the board of like.
Well, he didn't know like why I did what I did. Like in the car while the radio was on, I never sang the melody ever. I was always harmony, and he was like,
why are you doing that?
Why do you do that? You always you sing like, and I'll switch from third to fifth, you know, like I'll jump all around. He's like, why do you sing like that? And I'm like, that's how you like get good.
Yeah.
Like you should do that.
I took some notes, and then I was working at that. We would have been like, I guess 18 or 19. And I was working third shift at Walmart way back then. And what's funny about that is that their CD is the exact same every day. And so all night, I would listen to the exact same songs. I mean, it switches for Christmas, but you know,
wonderful.
Yeah, you get one change, you know. And so I started practicing my harmonies to that CD, and I don't even remember all the songs, but I bet you if they came on, I'd probably latch right on to the notes. Yeah. So as far as like some of the not always great things, what's a hurdle or a challenge you've had like as a worship leader that you've had to kind of overcome?
A hurdle. I think the biggest hurdle was like working through performance culture. The space that I talked about earlier where I experienced that discouragement and kind of just quit. Yeah. It was a heavy like performance culture there. Like, you know, just a lot of pressure and a very individualistic pressure. Like it was not a communal aspect to it, which is, you know, in essence, the gospel of Jesus is very communal. Yeah. So like our spaces within the church should definitely be that way. So, but it wasn't like a shared load. It's like, hey, you need to deliver, and if you don't, like, we're gonna fail. Yeah. So yeah, just kind of overcoming that and really working through that and getting into a healthy context where a team, everybody kind of operates in their strengths to build up the body or to build up that worship team. So it can make, you know, what it's supposed to make, a beautiful picture of worship. Like that was that was pretty tough.
Yeah, I think for me, what I hear, right, is like my own conviction in that of like when I feel that, like there's times where, okay, you have it like when people do it to you, right? Mm-hmm. But like a lot of the time, I'm already like, I'll do that to myself. Like I'll believe the lie that like if I don't show up, it's gonna fail, which is not true. You know what I mean? Like, and it's just about, and so
wow,
when you're already like, I mean, really, I'd say for me anyway, like speaking on myself, it's insecurity. Like,
yes.
And that was a big thing.
It's
where,
insecurity
like,
and pride at the same time.
Yeah, for sure.
Which is so weird.
Like, because you don't want to show up and look bad.
Right. You don't want to fail.
Like, yeah. You don't want to mess up,
yes.
right? Like you want to do good. And I've caught myself in that, like even as I take on new things, that's been a spot for me. Like, so I just started playing drums. Mm-hmm. And it's been a need at our church. And so I've been playing drums since like May. At least twice a month, which has been scary. And I want to do well. Yeah. Like I don't want to show up and botch it and throw the rest of the band off. And in a very like logical way, there's an essence of when you're the drummer, if you do mess up, it will throw other people off. So there's a reality to that.
Yep,
But then there's also like I'm finding myself having to put like a mental like check yourself. Yes. Like, you know, where you go, all right, Lord, if I'm going to do well, let it be for you. If I do bad, let that be for you too. And that's been my prayer, like because I get into that moment, I'm like, here comes the fill. Like, and like, I want it to go good. And I don't think that there's necessarily something wrong with wanting to do well because you want it to be like the best, because the best is what honors the Lord. But there's a complex in there for how we handle that internally, I think, on some level. I don't know. I don't think I'm wording it perfectly.
It's the motive.
Yeah.
I think what the enemy loves to do is to get us to focus on ourselves.
Yeah.
And that's where we fall into that trap of like, okay, this is no longer about Jesus. This is about you and how you want to be seen. It's
like a balance that's very, very hard to hold. Of like, you know, that like the task that's been put before you in a lot of ways biblically is like be perfect, but you also know you're not perfect.
Nope.
And so how, you know, like I don't think I've been to a church where I haven't, at least not anything like at least not contemporary, where you don't hear the words pursue excellence, right? Like that's very common in church culture where you hear that. And it's like, I totally am about that. And then it's like, also, what do we do when we show up and we weren't excellent? And like, how do you steward both of those things, right? Because it's like I need to be totally ready to admit that I failed, but I also need to remember that God has grace for failures, like right at the same time, while not letting yourself off the hook for coming up short. Also recognizing that God is more powerful than like you're coming up short. You know? And like,
yes. And his love,
it's very
and his
difficult.
Grace, it covers it. It covers it.
Yeah.
And it's like, we can't be so prideful again to think that God is going to leave the well-being of his children's like encounter with him to us.
It's,
you know,
it's like this, it's like that. And then at the same time, knowing like I should have done better. And I didn't want, I wanted it to be better. And like to hold both of those with equal weight and just let yourself sit in the tension that's right in the center of that and just like try, you know?
Yeah.
Like, it's a heart-wrenching thing that I don't think, and then we talk about like, oh yeah, worship leading is emotionally draining. Like, yes, it is. That's why. Because that's what's, a lot of people think you're just up there like not trying to discern through all that.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think you would hope like that worship leaders are, that you're discerning like, how do I continually stay in the right place with the right heart as I walk through this?
Yeah.
And man, it's like such a...
And not getting in your head about like what you're seeing happen in front of you too, because like you're playing and you look out the crowd and everyone's standing there looking at you, staring like this, and you're like, oh God, it's not spiritual enough. Am I the problem right now? I don't know. So.
And it's like you can't, what I found is, because I used to close my eyes, but then I discovered that it's kind of like impersonal when it comes to like just engaging with your brothers and sisters. So I don't have that escape all the time anymore. So yeah, it's like I've been praying and asking God to just bring me to a level of rest in him, to where, you know, like you said, we practice and we're as excellent as we can be. But then it's like, okay, Holy Spirit, do what only you can do.
You gotta let go of it at some point. You can't
there
just,
you go.
You can't just
you gotta let
it.
go.
Yeah, for sure.
I used to hate the eye contact. My dad used to tell me, look at the back wall above their heads. Like they think you're looking at them, but you're not. So that's still what I do. So I look at the back wall. I was the eyes closed guy for, I don't know, for the first few years.
Yeah.
When it came to singing specifically. And when I was playing guitar, I just looked straight down. Right at the fretboard or the chord chart. Whatever needed to happen, you know. It's a cool thing, though. Like that it changes over time. Because, like, I mean, you know, we all started leading pretty young in our lives, and you know, from teens at least, and so there's this like recognition of
nobody has the best mindset at 16.
When we were doing that, there's we didn't think about half. At least I didn't. I won't speak for all of us, but I didn't think about half what I think about now at 13. When somebody was like, "Do you want to play acoustic guitar this weekend?" I was just like, so in the moment of trying to actually like musically just play what they handed me. Like I was just overwhelmed at that. And so over the years for there to be new things and you know, you go from like, for me, it was like taking on guitar, then taking on singing. Then I got to play keys and now I'm playing drums now. And it's just such a gift to like, for God to have new things in it, basically your entire life, you know, which has been sweet.
Is there like, to you, like a certain people group or like group of people that you have like a heart for, like when you're worship leading? Like, is there someone you're like specifically hoping to reach or anything like that?
I've really just recently got more into songwriting. I've always written songs, but now like there's just a different grace. Like now that it's like it's time now. So like the things that I am writing, and even when I'm ministering, like I pray that God gives me language that would penetrate like trauma that people have been through, like trauma and hurt, particularly in spaces where they're supposed to be cared for, like church space, you know, because the enemy would love nothing more for us to just hold on to offenses like that, and it just keeps us from being free. I know because I've experienced it. So when I'm writing and when I'm ministering, I'm always thinking about people that may be like offended and not free because they're holding on to pain from the past or hurts from the past or whatever. Like,
I'm sure that's probably a bigger group than we would like to think that it is, you know, especially these days. I mean, with the internet and everything, like the amount of people who are like, I left church or I deconstructed my faith because the pastor said one thing to me, and I'm like, that's so sad. Like,
it is.
Yeah. It's like how do you cut through? I was talking about this yesterday because I was listening to a song that's spoken to me, and like one of the powerful things about it to me was it did a really good job in songwriting of acknowledging pain while also pointing towards hope.
Yes.
And I think that we have a really hard time, like at least I do in my humanity of it all, of like wanting to see hope when I'm hurting really bad. I just want to focus on pain. And I feel like if I'm looking at hope, I'm not doing justice to how much this hurts or like whatever it is. Right. And like sometimes it's like in that song, like that was one of the really cool things about it. That it just like, you could tell that like what they were going through was real, but they also like chose hope in the song. And that was such a cool, like, man, that's such a well-written song. Like that's so difficult. It's called Moving Forward. It's a great song. It's by Colony House for anybody that wants to check that out. But,
for sure.
So when it comes to like your calling, and that calling like as a worship leader, or if it's not quite just like, I know there's some variation in like how you would probably word your calling, but so I guess if there is, what would that be? Like, what do you view as your calling, and what would be your piece of advice to somebody with the calling that's like similar?
Right. So I'm definitely a worship leader, and that is part of the calling. But even above that, I'm a shepherding, pastoring. So worship leading is a vehicle for me to shepherd people. One of the vehicles that God has given me. I also am very passionate about health and wellness and juicing and teaching people how to take care of their bodies. So that's another vehicle for shepherding. Like I lead people through like detoxes and fasts and stuff like that. But yeah, it's all like shepherding. It's all like just caring for the body of Christ. So yeah, I definitely feel that heavily. And then just like the discipling piece of that, just like really sharing the gospel and like walking people through like what it looks like to love God and love our neighbor. Like that's what I feel called most to. And I think God will continue to provide like several vehicles for me to do that. Yeah,
of course.
Yeah. Of course. Absolutely.
What would be your piece of advice to somebody else that feels called to do the same thing?
Yeah, I would say get ready to lay your life down.
That's awesome.
Yeah, because it's like when you're called to this, it can't be about you. Like you cannot be the focus of it, because if it is, then you're not gonna do very well. And I think, Jesus has given several like gifts, some apostles, some prophets, some teachers, pastors, evangelists. But we miss like the reason that he's given the gifts, which is to equip the saints for the work of the ministry. So it's to build up the body. It's not about an individual person or me, growing my social media platform or like saying, look at me. But it's like you were saying, like pointing people back to hope, back to Jesus always. So yeah, I would say gotta lay down your preferences, lay down your life, and just really.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting too, because we have like, I don't know, the view of that as like from America too. It's like I think to a believer that knows the Lord, I don't think I've met a believer that hasn't been able to, and I mean believers that are in very tough circumstances, they'll still say, the Lord has blessed me. You know what I mean? And so there's that perspective of recognizing like it's better, like people that have lived a much harder life than I, you see a lot of people come to that same conclusion of like, it would be better to be where I'm at with the Lord than it would be to be anywhere else. You know what I mean? Like
without him, like that's
right. Whew. Yeah. And that's always like, it's such a touching thing to see when I feel like, well, one, it's like when I feel like my life is hard and then I'm like, it's not like, like when I go through a moment or go through a thing or whatever, and it just reminds me so much of like, we look to, well, I mean, it sounds cliche or it sounds corny, I think, especially if you're not a believer, but you have that example of like, what did Jesus go through? What did he walk through? And it's real. And so there's this, I mean, you can't, I think when you're talking to, especially people outside the church, you can't make people believe that, obviously, but as far as my personal experience, I've lived a life where I've known that to be true, that like, it's been better to be with the Lord through every hard thing.
Yes.
And than it would have been without him, so.
Yeah.
So we'll take it lighthearted for just a sec. Well, I don't know. Maybe this is lighthearted. Maybe it's not. Jump ahead 5 years, music and ministry. Where do you see yourself? Like what goals do you have, or what do you feel called to walk towards?
Yeah. So definitely more songwriting, more releasing of music, which is huge for me to like be here actually in the space of doing that. And I really have a goal of, I know it's like popular, especially in artist world, to just kind of release singles, but like I still love to sit down and listen to
albums,
a body of work. So that's definitely a goal. And then also I definitely feel called to like mentor other worship leaders. Like I've been mentored, like I've been discipled, because it's just something so encouraging about being able to sit with someone or talk to someone who has been where you are.
Yeah.
And has survived, has thrived, you know, is such a testimony. Yeah. So, I would definitely want to get more into mentoring and having that be an avenue for ministry as well. And, you know, obviously keep loving my family well and loving people well, the basic things. But
What's your songwriting process like right now? Like, how's that work for you?
So I have discovered that I am definitely one that writes by inspiration. So I'm not just going to get up one Monday morning and put it on my to-do list, oh, write a song today.
Yeah.
Like, some people do that and they can do it. I think that's great. But like, again, my ear, so I will hear certain words and they will just like jump out to me. And it can be like in a conversation with someone. A lot of times it's when someone is praying, like the song that I'm releasing, going to be singing today. Like, that's how it started. Someone was praying for the room and they said this phrase and I was just like, oh my God, that is like a whole song. Let me write that down. And then it just kind of builds from there. And then I, you know, bring friends in, get ideas, and like, you know, obviously scripture is big. I'm full of scripture from a kid. So that stuff, it comes out when I'm writing. I'm like, oh, I didn't even know that was there.
Yeah,
but
like you write it, you're like, I'm pretty sure that's a verse. Let me go find that. Yeah, like
exactly.
Yeah, for sure. Been there. Definitely been there. Or I had somebody take a song that I wrote and literally like they were talking before us. We went and played down in Columbia and they went up before us and like they had read the lyrics of the song enough to know the scripture reference and they were like, and they started like explain the backstory, but they didn't really know the backstory. It was this kind of awkward moment where I had to be like, well, honestly, I didn't write it out of that. Like it's definitely there because I've read that verse and like, but it literally like it hit me like that's a song called Holy Ground where I sat and just wrote it like in one sitting. I was like with a friend and I said, I'm pretty sure I'm gonna write as soon as you leave, and they left and I wrote the whole thing and I don't know, it had to be like 20 minutes.
Wow.
And it does, it calls back to like when you read the lyrics, a lot of that imagery kind of pulls to like Moses and Exodus and the burning bush and stuff like that. But I definitely wasn't like referencing it while I wrote it. It just was there, you know, and that's always a fun.
That sounds like a really good song.
Oh, I'll show it to you.
Yes,
I'll show it
absolutely.
to you. I think you'll like it. I hope you'll like it.
Yeah.
So we're gonna close. We got two more questions. Second to last question is gonna be just we have this kind of as our branded question. So when we ask everybody, what does music mean to you and why is it important?
Yeah, like outside of Jesus, music has been like everything to me. So not only the highest like level of creation for me or creativity is there with music, but like almost every important or significant event in my life, I can trace back to a song or some type of music. So, and I may not remember anything else that happened. But like I'm thinking back to my kindergarten graduation and I don't remember much about that day, but I remember being so excited about the songs that we were going to sing as a class. Like, you know, frivolous songs like Hey Diddle Diddle, The Cat and the Fiddle. But
my 5th grade graduation had Time of Your Life by Green Day. I'm pretty sure, which is hilarious because I didn't even remember that till you just said it. Sorry.
So yeah, but I remember that. And even like I'm thinking back to my wedding day. And I think, first of all, I didn't even really want a wedding. I kind of wanted to go to courthouse, but my husband, that's a whole story. But we had a wedding. And I think all brides have like their thing that they kind of like, oh, this has to be right. But for me, like, I didn't care about flowers. I didn't care about what kind of chairs were there. But this music,
I love that.
It has to be right. And that's where most of my time went, making sure that was intentional, like to set the atmosphere of the day, making sure the presence of the Lord was in this space. Yeah. So
we'll close with this, which is what song are you performing today, and will you tell us some of the story behind it?
Yes. So the song that I'm performing today, a song I wrote, is called Crave, What You Say About Me. And kind of like I was telling you, I write by inspiration. So someone was praying one day and it was just like one line, like, Lord Jesus, teach us to crave what you say. And I was like, oh my God, yes. So, and it kind of went from there. And then I don't know if you guys watched The Chosen, but
I've watched a little bit of it.
So the first episode of The Chosen, like, it's like when Mary Magdalene was like, it flashed back to her childhood, and her dad like instilled the verse of, or the passage of Isaiah 43 in her for when she got scared or anxious, and she would, I created you, I formed you, I called you by name, you are mine, do not fear. And that really jumped out to me to go with like, okay, like the God of all creation, like this is what he says about me, this is what he thinks about me. So if I can actually train my mind, train my heart to believe this and to hear this above like all the lies of the enemy, I think my entire life will change. So that was like the thought and the idea behind it. And I kind of want everybody who hears it to like be able to grab that, extract that from the song. So
that's awesome. I love that verse. My first band,
Me too.
my first band was called Redemption's Cry when I was a kid, and a lot of their Sarah Bowman is the one that came up with the name and everything and started the band, and a lot of her inspiration was out of Isaiah, and like we have a little frame on our TV stand that's Isaiah 43, which is I've caught it's literally like the same. We have that, so I love that verse.
Yes.
Is there anywhere we can point online for people if they want to follow you or like see
Yes.
Updates on the music when the song comes out.
Right. So Instagram and TikTok are the same handle. It's at Mandy_Carmenate.
Okay. Awesome. Well, it's been so wonderful to have you here.
Yes, thank you so much. Amazing.
We're very excited to hear Crave. And we're going to close here. So without any further ado, here's Crave by Mandy Carmenate. Thank you guys so much. We'll see you soon.
Bye.
Help me believe what you say. Help me believe what you say. Rise up, daughters, wake up, sons, for you are my precious ones. Yes, I formed you, and I'm calling you by name. I know there've been some lies spoken. I know you've had your heart broken, but I am Redeemer, and I'm redeeming the time, and I am with you, so don't be afraid. And all that matters is what I say. So teach me to crave what you say about me, what you say about me, what you say about me. Teach me to crave what you say about me, what you say about me, what you say about me. Help me believe what you say about me, what you say about me, what you say about me. I choose to believe what you say about me, what you say about me, what you say about me. Oh, 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 oh. Rise up, daughters, wake up, sons, for you are my precious ones. Yes, I formed you, and I'm calling you by name. I know there've been some lies spoken. I know you've had your heart broken, but I am Redeemer, and I'm redeeming the time. And I am with you, so don't be afraid. And all that matters is what I say. Teach me to crave what you say about me, what you say about me, what you say about me. Teach me to crave what you say about me, what you say about me, what you say about me. Help me believe what you say about me, what you say about me, what you say about me. I choose to believe what you say about me, what you say about me, what you say about me. Oh, 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 you say I'm honored, made for your glory. You say I'm chosen and worthy to die for. You say I'm precious, your awesome treasure. Oh, how you love me. Yes, I'm waking up. You say I'm honored, made for your glory. You say I'm chosen and worthy to die for. You say I'm precious, your awesome treasure. Oh, how you love me. Yes, I'm waking up, no more sleeping. Yes, I'm waking up, no more sleeping. Yes, I'm waking, I'm coming alive now. Yes, I'm waking up. Good morning, I'm waking up. Just teach me the language of your longing. I'm living on every word that you speak. I'm living on every word that you speak. And I hear you say, away with the conforming. Just be who I created you to be. Away with the conforming. Just be who I created you to be. Away with the conforming. Oh, just be who I created you to be. Yeah, away with the conforming. Oh, just be who I created you to be. Yeah, just be who I created you to be. Just be who I created you to be. Yeah, just be who I created you to be. Just be who I created you to be. And I am with you, so don't be afraid. And all that matters is what I say.